either. Listen, I want to shift gears here real quick because there's also some things going on here in Washington, D.C. Netanyahu was here, but also so was Volodymyr Zelensky. And of course, the proximal reason for this was Lindsey Graham, his funeral and all this, and we'll talk about that another day. But speaking of Lindsey Graham, his ghost was in the Senate still, even though he was in a box. His ghost was still active on the Senate floor. And I'm going to show you a couple of sound bites here from what some of our senators are saying now, trying to resurrect the spirit of Lindsey Graham. And then Senator Blumenthal here, who went to Kiev many times with Senator Graham, says that one thing that is the legacy of Lindsey Graham is that the Ukraine fight is our fight.
Ukraine's fight is our fight. Nobody believed that more deeply and passionately than Lindsey Graham. And this vote is a step forward. We still have a path we need to travel, but it is a profoundly solid vote for Ukraine, showing that the American people are on Ukraine's side and that we will stand with Ukraine, stopping the flow of blood money, fueling Russia's slaughter and its murderous invasion, and bringing Putin to the table for peace.
Sorry, you saw about the slaughter. I thought he was talking about Netanyahu for a second. My bad. But let's go back to the first part. Is it really our fight? And is it really the American people who want this war to continue?
No. But I thought Ukraine was winning. In fact, it didn't stop.
The tide has turned.
It said, in fact, Ukraine has won. So why do we need these sanctions? I mean, if Ukraine is winning, if they so decisively have shifted the inertia of the battlefield to their favor, why do this to further inflame relations with China and India? Because Ukraine is winning, God. Now, so I mean, this just exposes the propaganda that's out there, and they talk about this as punishing Russia. No, they're going to punish China and India, and at some point, these insulated souls up there on Capitol Hill will come to understand that the more we attack the economies of China and India, the greater the incentive for them to separate themselves from us and not have any more financial dealings with us and not do any more trade deals with us, which ends up hurting the United States, then as they shift off into global markets that are in the global south. So this is just sheer madness on their part. And again, what are they going to supply? More Patriot missiles? Oh, sorry. The production on that is set back so long, you're not going to see anything for 3 years. And even if we give you the recipe, so you can make your own, now you got the little problem with China and the rare earth minerals that are needed to make it. This fantasy world these guys live in, because they still want the money to flow from Lockheed, and Lockheed wants to still get paid, even though it cannot produce the things that it's claiming that what it's under contract to produce.
Yeah, but they'll sure do those contracts, though, and they'll figure out that part later. Let's get the money flowing first. But address, just for our audience, anybody who may be new here, when they hear people like Senator Blumenthal saying that our fight, or Ukraine's fight, is our fight, we're both fighting the same evil, what do you say to that?
I'll say with my new friend, because we had to drive from Miami to Sarasota last night because they missed a connecting flight. So I had 3 hours to chat in the car. And he described his first time in Ukraine, because he's been in Ukraine involved with intelligence operations. So I got a lot of interesting insights. He said, the first time he went there, he said, "Hey, man, these people, they're great." He said, "Really like the people." He said, "Then I go to the cafes, and there's all these Nazi flags and emblems, the swastikas." And he's going, "What is this?" And, that underlying element of neo-Nazism that infuses Ukraine, it's real. And, they try to hide it. They certainly don't parade it around on the surface, but it's there and it's genuine. And up to this point, we've been able to say, oh, that Nazi stuff doesn't mean anything, because look, Vladimir Zelensky's Jewish. Yeah, he may be genetically Jewish or born into a Jewish family, but as far as confronting the Nazis, who the Jews claimed caused the Holocaust, and I'm not disputing that, but I'm saying, so if you blame the Nazis for causing the Holocaust, why is it that you embrace a country that advocates Nazism? Because I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. You got to make a choice, one or the other. Either you're really against Nazism because it's associated with the Holocaust, or you really don't care. The Holocaust is just a sideshow, meaningless. But that's what I see coming out of their choices in this regard, and embracing this little cocaine cowboy, Zelensky.
Yeah, definitely none of that is in America's interest at all. One other that you may have noticed when he was Senator Blumenthal was talking, just standing off to his left there, or his right on the screen, was Senator Katie Britt. Now, she's going to get up here and with a lot of emphaticness, a lot of passion, is going to say, hey, all this stuff is designed to drive Vladimir Putin to peace.
2 weeks ago, we stood here in a bipartisan fashion. You had people from all cross sections of their conference standing shoulder to shoulder to say, we want this bill to move forward. We want Putin's war machine to end. We want accountability for the Kremlin, and we want to drive Putin to the table and ultimately have peace. Well, in typical Lindsey fashion, he found a way for us to vote on this bill right after we came back from celebrating his life. I know that he told me, and he told a number of people standing up here, that despite all of the incredible things that he did throughout his tenure, and I hope that y'all will look at that, this man had his hand in everything. There was nothing that went on in this building or really around the world that he didn't have an idea that he wanted to advance for the betterment of the people that he served. But he said, with all the things that he had done, this legislation, getting it across the finish line and to the president's desk, would be the most consequential piece of legislation that he had ever led.
To me, that is the biggest condemnation of Lindsey Graham you can imagine. A U.S. senator for however many years, all those years as a House member of allegedly the state of South Carolina, and the defining legacy is a damn bill that's going to put economic sanctions on Russia that's not going to work. That's pathetic.
Well, actually, it doesn't put economic sanctions on Russia. It put economic sanctions on China and on India and on any other country, say Europe, that tries to buy oil from Russia. Now, look, the reality is the world, these countries need oil, and there's not some great alternative out there that they can go to. So Russian oil is going to continue to be in demand, and no matter what obstacles, what sanctions, what penalties are imposed by the United States, those countries are going to circumvent them, and it will put the United States in the position of having to try to exercise leverage where we don't have any. It's one thing if China was dependent upon the United States for the export of food and other critical pharmaceuticals and rare earth minerals. Just the opposite. The United States is dependent upon China, and for those, or has been. And what's China doing? China is pursuing a deliberate policy to cut ties with the United States. And in tandem with that, selling off its dollar supply, buying up gold. They are the United States, the largest export. One of our top export was gold, not food, not anything, gold. And that gold is going to China, and China's storing it in its vaults, because in the future, if you want to have a secure place for your money, you're going to invest it in China, in Chinese bonds that are gold backed, unlike the United States Treasuries, which are backed by the promises of Scott Bessent.
Yeah, we know how far that's going to go.
Yeah.
Listen, I know you're just about out of time. One more thing I want to get your view on here, because she said she wanted to drive this bill. She wanted to drive Putin to peace. Here is what that same Vladimir Putin yesterday said, and he seems to be talking about something besides submitting to the United States Senate.
I will reveal a secret. My colleague will not be offended that during the award ceremony, one of the recipients whispered to me, "We will win. We need to be bolder." I really want that. But a question arises even bolder. And here, just as in the economy, there are risks. The risks is losses on the battlefield on our side. Therefore, we will also act carefully here, but persistently and consistently achieving the goals set for the country, and we will achieve them.
Now, just before that statement there, he had given this long list of how they had survived against the very sanctions that Senator Britt is talking about there, and how they learned to live without them. Not that we needed to have that, because we can see it for ourselves. But what do you think President Putin is thinking here in terms of what may be coming next by saying, hey, we've been taking the slow, methodical process, but that has some risk to it. Now we have going to be a little bit bolder, and he specifically mentioned we may incur more casualties. What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, Russia's ops tempo is definitely going up, and we've already seen it. They have now shut down the ports of Odessa and Nikolaev, completely shut down. Nothing's going in, nothing's coming out. That is a stranglehold on that. That's literally cutting off the supply line of oxygen to the Ukrainian economy. Then on top of that, Russia is on a nightly bombing missile strikes on key production facilities, military targets, in Kyiv in particular, but they're also hitting in other cities. And then on the ground, the offensive actions that are taking place across the battlefront from the north, Sumy, Kharkiv, down into Donetsk, around Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, enveloping cauldrons, and then into Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia. I think you're gonna see probably in the next month or two the Russians begin to actually move physically onto Odessa. So wow. Putin's made it clear. No longer, in the past, they were willing to say, okay, you recognize the 5 territories: Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk. Recognize those, and then we'll pull out of Sumy and Kharkiv. No, that's off the table now. They're going to stay there. They're going to stay in Sumy, Kharkiv. They'll stay in other places. But look, before this is over, Russia's going to have control of Kyiv. And
I keep hearing people say that.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be this year, but that's where this is headed. And there's nothing Ukraine and the West can do to stop it.